don't forget to subscribe and become a member of the Bit Squad. As a Bit Squad member, you have the opportunity to win a Nano Ledger S along with 3 Litecoins for the month of January. Just make sure to subscribe, like, and comment on all of our videos in January for the maximum number of entries. All right, guys, we are live. I am here joined by my friend Forrest. I always want to call him by his YouTube channel, but you like to be called Forrest and your channel is Hashoshi, is that right?
Yes, sir. You got it.
Yeah. I'm thinking about having people call me by my name at some point. I don't know if that's a real thing or if it'll happen, but we'll see.
Maybe one day.
I get a lot of "you're not a boy" comments, which I mean on one hand is good, like yeah, I'm a man, you know, but on the other hand it's like yeah, you gotta really understand the beginnings of the channel, you know, to really understand. I used to have a sidekick and he was a turtle, so you guys may have missed that. Well, welcome everybody to the live stream with Forrest from Hashoshi. And, you know, tonight we're going to be talking about Tron versus Ethereum. I laid it out at the very beginning of the year that I think that I don't think that Tron is going to pass Ethereum this year, but I do think it is definitely going to compete for the go-to platform for ICOs and also for dApps. And so I thought, what a better way to kick this off for this year than to talk with Forrest, who is a developer himself. So if you want, go ahead. I know you've been on the channel before, but go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about your involvement on the development side and maybe kind of how that rolled into your channel.
Sure, man. Absolutely. Yeah. So really early on in my blockchain career, I started working on some Bitcoin open source code just for fun. I wasn't a contributor to the project or anything like that. It was one of those things where I just started playing around with it, learning about it. I think as a lot of people did, I read that Satoshi white paper and kind of fell in love with the concept and the technology behind all of this stuff. Then fast forward a couple of years, I stuck with it and I ended up able to land a job in the blockchain world. So since probably 2015 or 16, I've been doing this full time as a software developer, and it's been a fantastic experience for me so far. Building a lot of stuff with Ethereum, and for those of you who may not have seen, I did do a video recently about Tron. Having
good video.
Gotten a chance, thanks, man. Yeah, having gotten the chance to use Tron and actually put that to the test, it was very, very interesting to see how it compares now to Ethereum, kind of like a couple years removed from all the drama early on in 2017.
Well, but you know that's true, but yet people still want to bring it up. You know, people have a hard time letting go of that. I did a Tron video last night, and we basically had we had a comment that did very well on the video that was basically somebody just absolutely trashing Tron and saying that it's garbage. And it's all the typical stuff, you know, like, oh, Justin Sun, I don't like the way he markets. That's the long and the short of what they're saying. What they're saying is, oh, he says they have these partnerships they don't have. They plagiarize the white paper, yada, 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 yada. But I feel like these people are refusing to look at what is actually going on. And, you know, some things I want to talk to you about are like, I hear about that there's a lot of bugs in the programming and different stuff, so I want to get your opinion on that in a little bit. But basically, so were you, before you actually, well, let me slow down here 1 second. We also want to talk about the Tron Accelerator program, which I think they're supposed to be announcing the winners over this week, whatever it might be. But I was under the impression that maybe that is how you moved over from ETH to develop on Tron, experimentally at least, was because of the Tron Accelerator program. But we were talking off air before we went on, and that's not true. So how did you kind of get into decide that you wanted to, you know, code with Tron, and how did all that come about, and what were you working on?
Yeah, so 1 second. Sorry, people are saying they can't hear audio from your side, so I'm just trying to work on that too while we're simultaneously speaking.
Oh,
but yeah,
I'm so loud. I'm surprised they can't hear me from my house.
No, it's all good. It's all good. But yeah, just real quick, guys, if you're watching the stream here, having audio issues, no idea why, try and figure it out. But if you want to hear the whole conversation, what's going on, head over to BitBoy's channel. He's running there. You'll be able to hear everything. Sorry about that. So the question was from BitBoy's end, how I got involved with Tron and how I started using it, and if I had really heard about it during that Tron accelerator stuff. So no, the short answer is I didn't hear about it through the Tron accelerator program. Did just find out about that moments ago when you told me. But I did have a small project that I had to do as a part of my job that involved building with a platform other than Ethereum. So it was the ask was, we need some smart contract development done. We need a small app built that doesn't rely on Ethereum. Right now, I think the reason why is that the particular client that I was working with was a little bit spooked about some of the stuff that was coming out about Ethereum in the news.
Yeah.
Just
it's been bad recently. Yeah. I mean, over the last 6 months. Yeah.
Exactly. There's been a lot of negativity, and I think some of that's a little unfair due to like token price. Of course, when it's $1,300 and it drops down to, $83 or $90, then people are going to question it. But there are definitely some due criticisms for Ethereum from a technical standpoint. So it was a good little proof of concept for me and for them to be able to test something else. So a lot of the preconceived notions that I had about what Tron was about and what it could do were kind of blown away by that whole project, being able to play around with it. So it was a very interesting experience, to say the least.
Yeah. So did you have, before this happened, you said that you had, heard about Tron's white paper being plagiarized, yada, yada, yada. What kind of preconceived notions did you have going into working with Tron, maybe on the negative side?
Yeah, I think for me, early on in the process, I was definitely I had some negative thoughts about that white paper, obviously, because it was plagiarized. And having poured over the Ethereum white paper and yellow paper so much as an Ethereum developer, it kind of rubbed me the wrong way going into that paper, saying like, wow, this is a lot. Like a lot of this is the exact same thing. Like it's copy.
It also uses Solidity, right?
Yeah, and it also uses Solidity. So, I mean, from that perspective, I actually understand, obviously plagiarism isn't cool, but I understand how there would be some distinct similarities because it is the same type of platform and it does run with a variant of what the Ethereum virtual machine was at one time. So I get that. But I also think the main man, Justin Sun, he's got a very different way of going about marketing. He's a very like in your face sort of like guerrilla person who just goes out there like, I'm going to just take shots and it's going to get the word out, right? Effective, not my favorite style, but I mean, I still understand why he goes about it that way, because it's really hard to get noticed and it's really hard to get your point across in the crazy world that is Twitter and just the mainstream media. So those are the two things that really kind of twisted me away from it early on.
Yeah, those are generally, obviously, the two biggest complaints people have. And I will say that those are complaints that I had as well, going back over the last year. But I've come to believe that Justin Sun is actually a crazy genius. And that's where I have landed, and that every single one of these moves are very methodical. And it's not that he gets ahead of himself. Like maybe they're working on a partnership and he comes and says it out ahead of time. Like he knows what he's doing. He knows the publicity he's bringing to his project. And I'll tell you guys this. I don't know what your favorite bag is, but if it's not XRP or Cardano or Tron or Ethereum, you would be dying to get the kind of publicity that Tron gets. Like if you look at the Nano, for instance, which is a project that I actually used to like a lot, and there's still some things to like about it, but their number one complaint with their community has been like, nobody's marketing us, nobody's out there pushing us. And so we know, due to success of different ICOs that even turned out to be scams, the marketing is equally at this point is integral to the survival of a project as the actual substance and product itself. So, for me, that's one thing. On the other hand, with the plagiarism, it reminds me of, I'm not saying this is what happened, but it just reminds me of a Portlandia episode. I don't know if you guys ever watch the show Portlandia. It's really hilarious. It's really funny, but there's this one little episode that they have. Like each episode's kind of about something different, And they had this one episode where this guy, he's from Portland, obviously, and he's like some kind of like weird artist, and he has this character he created called Bart Sampson. And so he gets sued by Matt Groening. And they go to court, and the whole thing turns out to be this crazy thing where they actually, Matt Groening and the artist guy, whatever, they knew the same guy in high school. And it was a guy that looked just like that, and his name was like Bart Sampson or something like that.
Yeah.
It was a hilarious episode. And the whole point, though, is there can be things that go into something like creating a white paper, like you said, that can just be fundamentally similar. There are people that believe, and I tend to actually agree with this, that it was straight up plagiarism. Like, there's parts that you can look and say, okay, this was plagiarized. But to me, I'm more looking at the current and looking at the future, and I'm not looking back at the past. And Justin Sunders even came out and said that himself. He said, look, ultimately we decided that it wasn't plagiarism, and we've moved on one way or the other. And that's what I really implore everyone to do, is to get past this white paper issue. Because at the end of the day, if Ethereum and Tron have the exact same white paper, and Tron is able to execute it better than Ethereum, it doesn't matter. It's still going to be the one that wins. So it's all about execution at this point. And, you know, I think the addition of BitTorrent, some people don't think it's a big deal, but I think it's a really big deal, especially the fact that Tron was competing with Neo to buy it, and Tron won out. I think that says a lot about what BitTorrent thinks about Tron versus Neo. And so there's so many things to like about it. And I just think that it's time to put the white paper issue to bed. That'll be things that 2 or 3 years from now on Twitter, like, only the people who have been in it for the longest will even remember or even know about, as long as these two projects both are able to do well. So let's actually talk about the actual coding itself. There's been a lot of things I've been reading about from haters, from Tron haters, from FUD, you know, whatever. And everyone's entitled to their opinions. That's okay. Yeah. If I had Ripple or Ethereum as my biggest bag, like, I wouldn't want Tron to do that great either, you know? But
right.
What did you find about the coding itself? Did you find like some bugs, or were there some issues that you didn't experience with Ethereum, or did you experience similar things with Ethereum? Kind of put all that into perspective for us.
Yeah, so for those of you who are still sticking it on the stream with audio issues, BitBoy is just asking what my experience was developing with Tron, and just in general, did I experience any bugs, anything different between Tron and Ethereum? I think the main striking thing for me was the freeing experience of not having to stress about gas. And I think for anyone who may not be familiar, there is a secondary, like, non-token currency within Ethereum, and it's really a subset of Ethereum gas prices, like gas itself, that helps pay for the computational resources on the Ethereum blockchain. All that stuff, it's pegged to Ethereum, so you're paying with Ethereum tokens, right, but it's a different measure. And every time you execute certain functions that runs through the Ethereum virtual machine, all the computational energy that's required, it costs gas. And so I understand why gas was necessary, and that's to prevent clowns from creating contracts that suck up all the resources that then miners and full nodes have to really contend with in terms of electricity, right? So it makes sense. But the problem is that the virtual machine on Ethereum and the way that all the stuff there works code-wise, it's very, very expensive to run a lot of mainstream style apps. So, like, we've seen this issue with like ERC20 non-fungible tokens, like CryptoKitties and those sorts of things. And like Loom Network, for example, the people who created that Crypto Zombies game, they very quickly decided, we're not doing this on Ethereum anymore because we can't. It's too expensive. So
did they move it, or are they in the process of moving it?
Yeah, they
have
actually,
their own mainnet?
They forked Ethereum, and then they kind of rebuilt it to fit their requirements. But that just goes to show you that some of those bigger applications with large user bases, lots of transactions going on, it's not even plausible to use Ethereum anymore because of how much gas costs, right, and relative to token price. Obviously, it's not as bad now because the Ethereum volume is down so much, but regardless, it's still not good. And I think that was the best thing about working with Tron, because the transaction costs and the overall computational costs are relatively nothing. I mean, there's still some cost associated, even if you're freezing Tron tokens or whatever else, but it's very negligible, and it's something that didn't affect the way I was writing my code.
Well, they like, so I guess the equivalent that Tron has, and you can correct me on this if I'm wrong, like, I'm very open on this channel. Like, I'm not a super technical guy on this stuff. I'm not a developer. Now, granted, I've been learning more over time, so I can, talk about it a little bit. But I would say the equivalent to like gas for Ethereum, for Tron, it's like bandwidth.
Yeah, there's the
Yeah.
concept of bandwidth. So it's you have a certain amount of bandwidth that's given to you as a node on the Tron network,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess as a developer in that case. And you can, if once you use up that certain amount of bandwidth, then there's a cost associated. And I think you can actually leverage frozen Tron tokens, like being a part or an active participant in the network gets you more bandwidth in general to use. For those of you who are like super Tron monsters, let me know if that's not the case, but I'm fairly certain reading the documentation that is true.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole idea though is that it just makes a freer environment for people to create. Because for me on Ethereum, I find myself writing code that works, right? Because that's my job. But then I'm also writing code I'm limited by cost, especially if it's going on the mainnet. Like if I'm creating a private implementation of Ethereum to be shared between, 20 or so parties, then I can control everything about the gas. But if it's going on mainnet or it's going on testnet, you have to think about that from the perspective of performance and cost. Because if if someone's going to use this and it costs, $50 to make a transaction because the gas price for the functions that I've written are outrageous, then no one's going to use it.
Right.
That's the biggest issue.
Yeah, I think just to address the gas issue with Ethereum, I think the thing that most people get confused about, and if you've never tried to send an Ethereum transaction, then I'm talking to you. And if you have and you have this problem, you probably Googled it and already figured it out. But the biggest issue people have with gas is when they're trying to send ERC20 tokens. Or, I mean, it could be a ERC721, but there's only a few of those that are kind of popular, like Engine Coin. But with the ERC20s, you might have basic attention token, and you want to send that through like your, My Ether wallet or something like that. And the fact is, you can't do it unless you have Ethereum in your wallet, because gas must be taken out of Ethereum. It can't be taken out from ERC20. So I definitely ran into that problem when I first got into trading altcoins and stuff like that. So if you guys have ever had that experience, and that's definitely something to look into. And as far as freezing Tron tokens, that's definitely something I'm very interested in trying to figure a little more out. So I'm going to Nitron. I'm so excited. I can't wait. So going to Nitron. I'm leaving on Wednesday, heading out to San Francisco. And this time I will not be staying behind a curtain. For you guys that remember that fun little video where I stayed behind a curtain at Airbnb, I actually have a hotel this time.
Nice.
And so I am planning to find out a lot more about the wallets. I'm planning to find out a lot more about freezing. One thing I'm really interested in is the Tron bet. Do you know? Yeah, some people are saying that they're freezing their Tron tokens and they're earning like 1,000 Tron a day, which, right now that may not sound like that much. It's sitting at 4 cents, or I wish it was at 4 cents. Right now it's at like 2.2. It's like 0.026. Yeah, about 2.5 pennies. But I mean, if you think about that, I mean, a lot of people think on the next run, Tron could easily go up to $1 or $2. And if that's the case, a lot of people are predicting it will have like kind of an XRP like meteoric rise, and I agree with that. Especially due to some of the marketing things. If that's the case, you could be earning $1,000 or $2,000 a day just freezing Tron tokens. But my main concern though is just like how can I make sure that they're secure? And I guess I don't know how it works with a Tron bet, if you're freezing them actually through Tron bet, or if you're freezing them in your TronScan wallet and then somehow use it. Right. I'm not sure. So those are some of the big things I'm trying to figure out, along with also not really having anything to do with this discussion, but I really want to try to have some kind of like organized social media team for Tron like Litecoin has. I thought that would be pretty cool. So I
agree. And I think, look, like for all the people that have an issue with the way that Justin Sun markets Tron, I kind of agree with what you were saying before. Like, it may not be for you, and especially like all the stuff that happened when Tron came into the scene. I think it was a recipe for disaster. It was a plagiarized white paper and a huge ICO, sort of when ICOs were starting to come under fire for people. Like, what are all these ICOs? Like, where is all this money going, right? And then that kind of takes hold, and then people write it off. Like, I did that. I wrote it off, and I didn't even check back on it. And I probably wouldn't have unless I had to at my job, right? So I think getting back to now, where there's so much stuff that's being built around Tron and ecosystem, it reminds me a lot of what Ethereum was like, 4 years ago, when it was still relatively, the token price was obviously higher than Tron's is now. But it's not even about token price. It's about how many developers are out there, how many different open source wallets are there, how many people are building things on and around Tron. And the fact that there's a lot more of that out there now is definitely a good sign.
Well, I think this Tron Accelerator, are you familiar with the Tron Accelerator contest? Do you know what it was?
No, I do not.
Okay.
Fill me in.
I will fill you in. So the Tron Accelerator contest was basically where they invited developers. I mean, the idea was to come over from Ethereum, obviously, because it's the same language and stuff like that, and build decentralized applications. And then Tron had some kind of screening process, and they went on to judges, and they had $1 million worth of prize money to disperse. Now, there's been a couple little discrepancies. They changed the prize structure after the contest was over, but they lowered the amounts of the prizes, and they increased the amount of winners on the prizes. So to me, I mean, yeah, I would prefer them to have just stuck with what they said initially, but they're still giving out the same $1 million. And a lot of people, they were absolutely blown away by how many developers came on and entered into the contest. They had no idea. And I mean, this ain't a lot for Tron to be overwhelmed, So they had way more submissions than they thought they were going to have and things like that. But this is kind of the way that I see it playing out. I see we had all of these ETH developers coming over to Tron and building these decentralized applications. And for a lot of them, all they basically had to do was like reskin them, Yeah. And so now they've came over and they've dipped their toe into Tron and say like, hey, this is kind of like almost the same as Ethereum, except for it doesn't have the gas issues. And I think they may be able to pull some people over permanently. And then I think you also are going to have a lot of ETH developers that are going to say, if all I got to do is take my D app and reskin it, then that's pretty easy to do on both. So I see it only as a win-win, because they're going to be pulling some people over full-time, some people over part-time, and then Ethereum's going to be losing some people that are going to see, the lack of restrictions with the gas and stuff like that. So
I'm with you on that. I think that the biggest thing for Ethereum is that, I think all projects have certain issues and like challenges that they're faced with, just because that's the place we are in this movement, as we all like to call it. It's not, none of these projects have reached maturity by any stretch. That just hasn't happened yet. And it probably won't happen for a while, because there's a lot of stuff that has to get ironed out for this to all reach mainstream adoption and usability, all that sort of thing. But the thing that really strikes me is that all these different smart contract platforms are starting to come into their own and release these products that they were promising for so long. Case in point, the Plutus smart contracts for Cardano, right? Up until now, Cardano was kind of like, it was cool to me, but it was not very useful because I couldn't build much on it.
Right. And
now with those with the Plutus contracts, it sparked my interest. And after being able to use Tron and realizing my skill sets ported over to Tron super easily is the same thing.
There's a whole new world out there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for anyone who doesn't work at Consensus or doesn't work at Prismatic Labs, those sorts of things that are locked into Ethereum, should just give it a try and try and build something with Tron, try and build something with the Plutus smart contracts. I have a video about Plutus coming out really soon. But yeah, I think it's really important for people to understand that it's up to the Ethereum core development team to make these developers stay. It's not like you're just going to sit there and wait until they provide the scalability or they provide you the platform improvements to the virtual machine to make your life easier. It's your right as a developer to go out there and try and find greener pastures while you wait.
Yeah. So, let's see. I wanted to touch on. Okay, so I want to talk about BitTorrent for a second, because this was another thing that people brought up in my video yesterday.
Right.
They said that, oh well, BitTorrent is not they said, oh, it's not a partnership. It's not a real partnership. And I'm like, yeah, duh, he bought it. They own it.
Yeah.
That's an acquisition. So
Right.
BitTorrent works for Justin Sun at this point. Now, I don't know exactly how the hierarchy works and chain of command and between the two companies, but to me, this was the thing that was brought up. They said, oh, well, first of all, nobody would ever want to use, like, BitTorrent's already free. No one would ever want to pay for those sharding transactions. I don't know exactly what you would call those. They're not smart contracts on BitTorrent, so I don't know what you'd call them. But nobody would pay for that when it's already free. They'd already go somewhere else. And they also said, what was the other complaint about it? I think they just said that it wasn't a real partnership. And my answer to that is, to me, the reason why I started paying attention to Tron and the reason why I'm so big on the BitTorrent acquisition, it's not because of, the BitTorrent token that'll be coming out, which hopefully I'll get an airdrop of. I don't know if that'll happen, but it's not because people will be able to pay, to use BitTorrent. It's because it's really twofold. Number one, BitTorrent already has a huge, God, how many people did they say use it? I think 50 million. It's like a $50 million or 50 million person customer base. So at that point, it's very easy to cross promote, advertise, whatever. You've already got a pool of people to kind of sell yourself to. That's number one. Yeah. And number two, and I feel like the most important thing is, what is the biggest thing that Ethereum has had problems with? The number one thing that's been Ethereum's problem. What would you say it is?
Well, I would say the number one thing is scalability. But
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so part of their solution is through sharding and, basically being able to ease the network that way. Mm-hmm. And BitTorrent's already done that. They've already mastered that. And so it's really, to me, bringing in that expertise of a team of people that have already done something that you're wanting to do, that your competitor is really struggling to do. That is the value of bringing in BitTorrent. So I want your opinion on my comments, and then what do you think the value, if there is any, of bringing in BitTorrent?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, I agree with you. I understand what people are saying. Like, it isn't a partnership because it's an acquisition.
Right.
We have to stop thinking about some of these projects as like science fair projects that, like, if it's cool if like Amazon gives you $50 to buy some cool equipment and put your Amazon's name on it, right? Yeah. Like, they purchased BitTorrent for a reason, and we may not even fully understand what that reason is yet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't understand necessarily why they went the route of creating a separate token, because I think one of the appeals for me is that Tron was a single token environment. There's like no gas, there's nothing extra to worry about. Yeah. So I hope that they don't add just this too large a layer of complexity as a result of this partnership as they push towards like further scalability. But I think I understand why they did this and why they went for BitTorrent, and that's two reasons. One, BitTorrent is a really well-established, and I would say probably the only well-established and still existent, like, peer-to-peer file, like decentralized file sharing platform.
Yeah.
Most of them have failed or come under significant legal trouble. BitTorrent mostly found a way around all of that stuff. So that's a good thing for this type of market. But then I also think I agree with you from a scalability perspective. One of the number one promises that Justin Sun has so often tweeted about, and all of the correspondence from Tron has been all about, is we're going to get to like near infinite scalability, and we're going to do it quickly.
Yeah.
So I think that they're feeling the heat now because it's 2019. Serenity is theoretically coming in 2019 or early 2020. God knows if that's going to happen. I don't, but I think as other projects they're also building, Cardano is a new competitor in the field. Maybe they are going to be like a real bona fide competitor for Tron. So I think they're taking steps to really
down the road. Down the road.
Yeah,
their roadmap's too slow. Ethereum had first mover. Well, you could say Bitcoin had the very first movers advantage in terms of platforms. Yeah. Ethereum had the first movers advantage, and now Tron is going to have, obviously not the first move, but it's going to have an advantage on Cardano because it's already, on its full mainnet, and it's already moving forward right now. So I think Cardano is definitely going to compete, but I think it's probably going to be a good 2 years before that
Yeah, it'll
thing is
take
really
time.
unpopular. Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing is I was impressed at how quickly Tron went from,
Yeah.
from testnet and like not having anything, because I think that was the one thing that scared me off the most is like, I'm not going to spend time building something that's going to go on testnet and there's no way I could ever bring it to like production. Right.
Right.
So, I mean, they hit mainnet, not a lot of, I think because of the timing and the place we were in the market, not a lot of positive news and attention came from that whole mainnet release, which I think was a good thing actually for Tron. So I think the last thing that any project needs right now is like this ridiculous period of hype that sends this price sky high, sets expectations, and then goes back down to reality, and then everyone abandons it.
Yeah.
Because I think Ethereum's actually in that spot right now. Because I think
I completely agree with that. They way extended themselves.
Yeah.
And like you said, oh well, now it went all the way down to what, $83, whatever it was, and people are like questioning, will it work and stuff like that. To me, the most concerning thing isn't even the actual price drop in US dollars, has been the value compared to Bitcoin. It's dropped tremendously. It got down, it dropped like 75%, versus the price of Bitcoin even. And they were both falling at the same time. So when you've got two projects that are both falling and one's falling a lot faster than the other one, then that really shakes confidence in people. And then you got people that looked at Ethereum as kind of like a, it's on Coinbase. It was the first one outside of Bitcoin that was on Coinbase. Like, it was solid, something that, yes, you can lose money, but you won't lose it as quick as you will in one of these smaller, altcoins or crap coins, whatever people call them.
Yeah.
And so I think all that is shaking it really bad, and it seems like it's hit this resistance. It can't seem to get above I think it's 0.04. Yeah, 0.04 Bitcoins is the I guess that's, what is that, 400,000 Satoshis, whatever it is. It can't get over that right now. So
yeah, no, I agree with you. It's very interesting because I remember when Ethereum was at what I think the all-time high was like close to $1,400, maybe like 1392 or something like that.
I remember that day.
And I'm sitting there on that day, and first of all, I mean, I'm obviously stoked because who doesn't like to see that? But I was also terrified because in no way did I think that Ethereum, the token, was worth even a fraction of that price where it was at that point. And I think if you go back through Reddit or you go back through, well, I think it's easier to go back through Reddit than Twitter because Twitter has no real like easy way of searching back in history. But if you go back to Reddit and you look at people and how many people were complaining about Ethereum being virtually unusable during that time because of all the volume, that was the scariest part, because it was like, it was that point at which we had hit such complete like ridiculousness in the price. It just made no sense. It was like there was no way it was going anywhere but down from there, to me at least.
Yeah. Well, I wish you were around not to tell all my friends, don't listen to BitBoy. Of course, I wasn't even BitBoy back then. I was just Ben. That was just me. Yeah, I definitely coached some people into buying in at the all-time high. So
I mean, honestly though, it happens. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that in November of 2017 that I wasn't still buying things, because I thought we have some more room to run. I think everyone just kind of, it's almost like you don't know what's happening. Like, I have no clue why this is happening, but I'm stoked and I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing until I'm otherwise proven wrong. And that definitely happened for everybody.
Well, so you look back at the projections that people were making during those times, and even when the price started dropping, you might say like, oh, well, let's just say your portfolio is worth 100,000 or whatever. You would say, well, right now it's only worth 100,000. It was worth like 150,000, but I know eventually Bitcoin's going to go up to 1 million or whatever it's going to be, so I need to hodl,
Yeah.
And that's just not the smart way to play it. I mean, I don't even do TA at all. Like, I do no TA. And twice now in a week, I've said, hey, big giant green candle's coming. Last time it happened within 10 minutes. And this time it happened within a couple hours. It's just getting kind of easy to understand the charts, just watching all these, anytime you got a giant red candle, it seems to be matched with a giant green candle these days on the other
Yeah.
side, and vice versa. So hopefully we all learned a lot through this last run in terms of how to take the top and just be happy and not, you don't have to own your own island. Like a Lambo's a must, I get it, but you don't have to. You don't have to lose your island. I don't know if anybody noticed on my video I made last night. I don't have an ad blocker. I probably should because it makes my videos look worse when I got ads in there. But I don't know if you guys saw all the all the ads for Dodge Challengers that were in the background. So I've got one. I'm looking to upgrade it. So it'll be a while before I get that Lambo, though. Definitely.
Yeah, not in this market, man.
Yeah, I need Tron to hit about $2, and then I'll be. If Tron hits $2, I'm buying everybody on crypto Twitter a hot dog. I've already said that, and I will legit do that. I will legit buy everyone on crypto Twitter. I don't care if it's 10,000 people. I will legit buy them hot dogs. So
that's an impressive offer.
I'm serious. Mustard, ketchup, chili, whatever you want. You let me know. I'll send you a hot dog voucher. But so I had some people that are asking about Ethereum. As you are an Ethereum developer, we do have the Constantinople fork, and it's not a fork, and it is a fork of the code, but it's not a fork in the traditional understanding that most crypto investors have of a fork. It's not like like when you had Bitcoin, if you were holding it when the Bitcoin Cash fork happened, you got Bitcoin Cash. That's not how it is with Ethereum. Can you just explain a little bit about Constantinople, what it's going to do, and kind of what people should expect? Because isn't it launching like very soon?
Yeah, so the estimated time window from the devs was actually starting today and ending on the 18th. So between now and the 18th, it should be live. The block height, I think, is like 7,080,000, I believe. But I think the estimated, like based on the projections, is supposed to hit on the 16th. And so really the main few things that are happening with this Constantinople fork, and a lot of questions arose because the price of Ethereum actually kind of saw a nice couple days of upward projection because of this fork, I assume, or a lot of people said it was because of the fork, which I don't understand necessarily. This fork, though, is addressing a couple things that I'm stoked about. And the first of those is it's making smart contracts themselves somewhere between 8 and 10 times more efficient for certain functions.
Gotcha.
So certain calls through the Ethereum virtual machine are going to be that much more efficient, which obviously with all the stuff we talked about early on in the stream about gas prices and such, thank God they're doing that finally, and they're going into the virtual machine and cleaning things up a little bit, making it more efficient. There's a lot of technical details in the improvement proposals, but there are a total of 3 of them that are focused on the virtual machine. And then the more controversial one is the difficulty bomb delay and the reduction of block reward from 3 to 2 Ether. And I think a lot of people are confused about why they're doing all this. And I don't know if anyone remembers when they announced the difficulty bomb and the absolute anger that was coming out from every miner on Earth that does Ethereum about the difficulty bomb.
Yeah.
So essentially, the difficulty bomb was something that they were going to bring into the Ethereum network when Constantinople came. So obviously it was supposed to be now. That was going to slowly, but very, very, I guess what's the word? Comprehensively raise the difficulty of the proof of work mining puzzle until it became virtually impossible to make a profit as a miner using proof of work.
Right.
And so it was basically a way to slowly force miners to move over to proof of stake when it was ready. But I think the concern now is, now that they've delayed this difficulty bomb in a hard fork, does that mean we're not going to see proof of stake this year? Does that mean we're not going to see proof of stake 6 months? Or
yeah, I get that. I mean, there was a story out maybe about 6 weeks ago that the rumor is that that stuff isn't coming for years.
And it is possible.
Yeah.
The reality is that I think Ethereum, it's very possible that the core devs have overpromised. And I work in a very consulting oriented job. Like, overpromising is just one thing you don't do. Like, you just can't do that. It's better to underpromise and overdeliver all the time, no matter what. but based on the earlier projection that, okay, we're going to have proof of stake by 2018. If anyone looked at the GitHub for proof of stake for Casper, I think anyone who has any technical capability would have been able to go in there and say, there's no way this is ready for mainnet, like not even close. And I think that's what's scaring people from Ethereum most of all, is now that the high from all the high prices has gone away, people are like, all right, where's the joy going to come from here? How are we going to capture this attention and market share back? And with all these other projects like the Trons and such,
I know it's going to go to Tron.
Yeah. How is all this going to happen? How are we going to make this work? And the question is, or the answer is, I have no clue.
Well, that's why they keep overpromising and under-delivering. They have to keep overpromising, because if they don't, I think if people really understood the reality of the situation, and who knows, Tron might run into the same problem in, a year or whatever, But as of right now, I think if people knew the reality of what was actually happening with the delays and when they could actually expect some of these upgrades, the proof of stake, yada, 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 then I think they might start having some more confidence in some of the other projects. And, that might be why we're seeing, because if you're a whale, if you're an Ethereum whale, okay, which, by the way, if your wife is an Ethereum whale, don't call her a whale, just so you guys know. I tweeted that out one day. People really like that advice. But if you're an Ethereum whale, like, let's say you have, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $4 million worth of ETH, whatever it is, you would think that if you're that invested into a project, you might have some inside info, and it might be the whales that are kind of, keeping it from going to a certain price because maybe they're nervous about what's going to happen with it. I'm certainly not trying to FUD Ethereum. I mean, these are, these are just things that I think could possibly be going on. So speaking of FUD, and we basically use the word FUD now to just mean like a bad story, whether it's true or not, whether it's true or not. If it's a bad story, it's FUD. What do you know about Ethereum Classic? Do you think that's dead at this point?
I actually don't. I think that, well, first of all, the 51% attack, I'm not surprised that happened, because as soon as the very wide public announcement, so I think it was like 2 months ago, maybe even less than that.
It was about a month.
But the foundation said, like, we're done, we can't operate, it's not profitable. At that point, I'm like, I have a feeling that a bunch of people are going to abandon Ethereum Classic. The hash rate's going to go down so horrendously that a 51% attack is possible.
Interesting. Yeah.
Possible. I didn't think it was going to happen. I thought that people would just not even bother. And at the end of the day, it was a white hat hacker who basically said, like, this was like a proof of concept. Like, can I 51% attack Ethereum?
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah. So just recently gave back the whole $100,000 he stole.
Huh. I didn't even know that part.
Good for him. Or I guess it was a team maybe, or an individual. I can't remember. But
I thought it was a weird coincidence that what you're saying makes sense to me, about that basically they kind of announced, like, hey, we're vulnerable. Like that. Yeah. That's what you're kind of saying when they did that announcement. I took it more as what I was thinking, maybe a little conspiracy theory was, I don't know, there's supposedly some bad blood between the people from the foundation and other parts of the ETH Classic apparatus, if you will, their organization. Yeah. And I wondered if it was almost, not an inside job because they don't work for them, but something similar. What you're saying also makes sense. Yeah.
So that the core dev team basically quit out and then took that effort and pointed it towards 51%.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't rule it out, not to be a conspiracy theorist, but I think it's actually good for the market to see this stuff happen. Like, and the thing that pisses me off though is that after that happens, you cue the people who don't really understand what a 51% attack is, saying like, oh, Bitcoin's next, proof of work chain suck. It's like, no, that is not how this works. It was not proof of work that's to blame for a 51% attack. It's the fact that it's reliant on hash power and the overall cost that it would take to commission enough computing power to take over the network, right? So it's not the big projects that have a lot of adoption, have a lot of miners and a lot of volume those are a lot harder to do. And I think like it's crazy, like $5.5 million per day it would take to 51% attack even like just Bitcoin theoretically, let alone the fact that it's actually probably more than that if it's not a computer model, because it's always fluctuating up and down. I don't know. I think it's good to see that proof of work is not invincible, because it never has been, and the importance of community involvement to prevent those things from happening, because ultimately that's what helps. The more people that use it, the harder it is.
Yeah. Now, with a 51% attack, is that the same as a double spend? Like they do a 51% attack and then they double spend, or because I don't know that much about hacking and mining. That's one of the areas I don't really cover on the channel. But is it basically where they take the hash power and then they get all the rewards for that period of time? And how does a double spend work into it? Because I see that a lot when we're talking about hacks with crypto.
So because all of the blockchain transactions and the verification that occurs throughout the history of the blockchain, it's all driven by hash verification. If you were to control 51% or more of the hash power on the blockchain, you would basically have freedom to go in and manually make changes to the records within. So you could then redirect all the transactions theoretically that are occurring on the blockchain to your own address.
So just during that window, you're basically coming in and sniping all the transactions.
Right, because you control the majority of the compute resources that are validating transactions. So when it's working the way it's supposed to, there's no one party that could even possibly mess with something without a cascading effect of every block after they messed with it being affected and making it very obvious that something went down. But in a 51% attack, you have enough control over the network to really do whatever it is that you want. You can change old transactions, no one will be able to do anything about it, and you can redirect new ones to a wallet of your choosing. So I think the latter is what happened. I think took over the network and redirected, quote unquote, those transactions to another wallet, and then later returned all that to the.
What a guy! What a
guy. I mean,
sorry, I didn't mean to assume the gender.
Yeah, no worries, no worries.
Could be a lady.
Honestly,
I don't know.
Could be, yeah. I don't know. I don't remember. I know I read that article and I don't remember.
Yeah.
It was a group, person, man, woman, dog. I don't know, but yeah, I think it's very interesting to see these types of things happening now when we're perceived, Bitcoin's been around for 10 years. It's much more mature now. The reality is that there's no maturity in this market at all, like none.
Yeah. Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think that, if you really compare blockchain and Bitcoin to the beginning of the internet, which we love to do, right? And a lot of people say, like, right now with crypto, we're around like 1992 or 1993. And I kind of tend to agree with that. But the difference is that when the internet was being created, when the internet was being first used, when it was being invented, when Al Gore made it, everyone knows that, right? I don't know how he managed to, have his book not get melted by climate change or whatever, but he was able to create the internet back then. And, it wasn't public. People, obviously I'm joking about Al Gore, but the creation of the internet was not public. And there were no records where you could kind of where the average person could see what was going on behind the scenes. Whereas because of the creation of the internet, which I like to call the modern day printing press, now everyone was able to see the creation of Bitcoin. We can trace it back to the beginnings of the Bitcoin Talk forums. We can, the cypherpunks, we can trace it back very far. Now, we ultimately don't know who Satoshi is, which is so crazy in this day and time, it's
one of the coolest things about it.
It's awesome. Yeah, I agree 100%. He's a folk hero. We're fascinated with wanting to know who it is, but yet I hope we never truly find out. It's fun to make up theories and talk about, but so I think with the creation of blockchain and Bitcoin, the difference why people think it's been around for 10 years and we should be doing this and doing that, is just you didn't see the underlying roots that were laying down were laid down for the internet, but you're seeing it with crypto. So we're not as far along as 10 years. If you want to talk about the crypto community, that and the crypto culture, that's only been around for a couple years, So some people will tell you, hey, I was on,
I agree.
Yeah. they'll say they were on Bitcoin Talk Forum or Reddit early on, but the true culture of crypto, which you might think moons and Lambos are funny, but they're part of the culture, like that really has not been around for very long. So exciting to see where this is all going.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. It's very interesting. Like you say, like it's so interesting that we don't know who Satoshi is. And I have one golden rule of how to know someone's not Satoshi if they say they are. Like, period. The whole point of Satoshi is not ever revealing the identity of Satoshi. So very interesting. And also, you were talking about how, like the juxtaposition of the internet and like modern day crypto. I think it's a whole other beast too, because while the nascency of the technology itself is similar, the internet was first of all coming out in a time when there were very few technical vocations. Like very few people had that computer technical capability. So the populace of people who could potentially attack those very wide open attack vectors at that period in time, very slim, very few people. And I think anyone who had that talent was focused on making the internet better instead of breaking it. That's just like conjecture. Obviously, I'm sure people are like, no, there's this hack that one time. That's fine. But I think now almost all the code is open source. There's nothing proprietary right now for the most part. Everything's out there. You can look through the code. The whole point is we want to make this code so good and airtight that even if we show you everything about how it works, no one can take over.
That's a good point. That's really cool. Yeah.
And that type of security is so difficult to achieve in code that I don't know that it's actually been done before. Bitcoin itself is not perfect either. It's lasted so long, and it's, I actually, even as recently as a year ago, I still was like wondering how in the world is this, having not been touched for realistically not being changed a whole lot since its inception. How is it still running strong?
Because it's an idea.
Yeah, it's an idea, and
Can't kill an
Bitcoin is
idea.
it's a great implementation of this idea, and it's a great place to springboard from. But it isn't like the perfect end all be all implementation of this technology, because I don't think that's necessarily been invented yet. Well,
that's one of the great things about the folklore, the folk hero of Satoshi, the legend, is, if he were around, which I personally believe he's dead. I believe it was 1 to 2 people. I believe he's dead. I think if you look at the candidates, a lot of the candidates are dead. Some of them are still alive, so it could be. But, the fact that he's not out in the front as a cheerleader, even if he is still alive, and he's just abandoned it. He just disappeared. He's like Kaiser Sose. He just disappeared into thin air, and he doesn't have the voice that someone like Charlie Lee has, or Vitalik Buterin has, or Justin Sun has, which draws a lot of contentiousness from other people and media scrutiny and scrutiny from people like us that are just in the space. And so I think that all of those things, like the developers behind Bitcoin, like there may be some infighting there. I think there's some infighting in the actual organization of the developers and things like that. But outside of that, the general public, like, there's nothing to really not like about it. Like, you might like something else more because you say, oh, this could take its place one day, but it is the king. It's the oldest. And there's nothing that you can really say negative about it in terms of, what's going on with it right now,
Yeah, nah, that's for sure. And to this day, I also think that all the Ethereums and, whatever project that you're interested in, a lot of the problems that have come are mostly attributed to the fact that what you said, they have figureheads, they have open organizations that run the whole thing. People naturally look to the creators to make decisions and to drive what the word is these days, right? So, as much as Vitalik may or may not want to be that figurehead, he is. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's a lot harder to differentiate what Ethereum is doing from these individuals that you see in the media. Whereas Bitcoin, you really don't have that much of a public figure. I mean, you have like the Bitcoin Cash people, obviously, that are very
Yeah,
out open.
they're not Bitcoin people.
Right, exactly. You have people that claim that they were and that they
Yeah.
have their, whatever. It's all a mess.
Yeah.
But like the Bitcoin core people, they don't really tweet. They aren't in the media. You
I
don't see
can't
them
name
on
one. I
CoinDesk. Yeah,
can't name one Bitcoin developer. And
they're in the shadows.
you know, maybe you're smart. Maybe people are smarter than me, and you can name some of them. But you know, I know Tone Vey says that's why he hates all the other projects because the developers for Bitcoin are so good. But I have no idea who they are. You know, so
yeah. Well, the other thing that's interesting is how few times has Bitcoin been forked in some way to improve the protocol? I mean, very seldom. Over 10 years, very seldom. The relevance is that so many other projects have had to go through countless different forks and all this contention and all this like just nightmarish stuff to get to their vision, because it was rushed, I think.
yeah.
Bitcoin could have been developed over the course of 10 years. So, I mean, that could have been theoretically now a 20-year project, and we have no idea. So we're judging these projects that have been around for 5 years.
Well, I have a theory. Here it is, very interesting.
Shoot.
I have a theory. The Mayans created Bitcoin. Okay, I'm just saying. It was Bitcoin was launched the day the Mayan calendar ended. Maybe that's not right. No,
Interesting.
It's not even close to right. I'm totally kidding.
At the end of the world, on the Mayan calendar, Bitcoin
But in all seriousness, that is kind of what it reminds me of, though. I mean, I know I'm being silly and making a joke, but which surprise, but. You know, with the Mayan calendar, you know, you look at their civilization back then, you're like, how in the world could they possibly have had the forethought to be able to see, you know, the calendars and the stars and, you know, the constellations and everything like 1,000 years ahead of time? And you look at Bitcoin, like how could Bitcoin, the creator of Bitcoin, been able to know kind of the development of how it was going to go and be that, like for the first time anything like that had ever been developed? I know some other people had some ideas. You know, Ripple actually goes back even further than, you know, the creation of Bitcoin, the idea of it. You also have Nick Szabo had, I think it was called Internet Gold, whatever it was called. You got people that had some ideas that predate Bitcoin, but it was the first implementation of it. And for that experiment to be able to have gone this well, and for the forethought that had to take and the foresight, I don't know if it was sight or thought, well, one or the other, but I think it's pretty incredible, you know, both, right? Yeah, you got to think it before you see it.
And I think whenever like I do a lot of these like blockchain, Bitcoin, like 101 talks, and I think the thing that people don't understand is that Bitcoin itself, the composition of what Bitcoin is, like none of the pieces are novel. Like a lot of the pieces are like really old stuff. Like proof of work, the whole concept of proof of work was invented by like an English mathematician, cryptographer in like the 60s and 70s, like ages ago. And the peer-to-peer networking idea originates in the 90s and really implemented in the early 2000s. Not a new thing.
Right.
You know, private key cryptography, again, private public key cryptography. I mean, that stuff's been around for a long time.
Since the 60s, right? Somebody had the idea of in the 60s, I think.
All of these things have been around for a long time. It was the combination of those things to create something that's sustainable without a large amount of centralization, because there's nothing that's truly decentralized yet. That's what's novel about it. It's the like amalgamation of all these other things that are actually kind of old. It's understanding how people work and understanding that you need to incentivize people to do the right thing and make it really ineffective and wasteful for them to do the wrong thing so that you don't have to have police. And it's very interesting because it's even more about the social part than it is about the tech, in my opinion.
I agree 100%. I've said it many times, you know, I already said it's like the internet was like the printing press, and now that everybody has all the information at our fingertips, the world will be drastically changing in the next 100 years. Drastically changing. And we've already seen it, you know, and when you couple the power of the technology that we have with the idea of decentralization and the idea of, you know, I know we're trying to build a wall here in America, but removing borders, you know, really removing borders, not necessarily socially. I mean, I understand we're probably going to have social borders and things like that, but removing the, you know, where we would have thought it was crazy. 15. I remember. Listen, guys, Demolition Man. Do you remember this movie? Have you seen this movie? I remember that movie I saw when I was a kid. I was probably in the 5th grade. There were some crazy things about that movie that were, showed where we were going with the future. Some of it was totally off, like, I don't know if we're going to be living like the Jetsons per se. Like everybody's got this idea of like, spaceships and tall buildings, whatever. I don't know if that stuff's going to happen. Who knows? But I remember there's a scene where Sylvester Stallone walks into this person's house and it's not his house. And all of a sudden somebody calls and it's a Skype message. It's a person, a video message that this person left. And of course it was a girl that was naked, which was, he was like, oh God, what is this? She had a towel and she dropped it or whatever. I remember that. I was in the 5th grade, so it really stuck into my head, I think. But, but the point is that was insane to think. I want to say that movie came out probably about 20 years ago. It was insane to think how easy it would be to do a video call. At that time, that was insane. People still had rotary phones 20 years ago. They were just starting to get phased out. In the United States, we were still only calling 7 numbers. Nobody had area codes. Or you had them, but you didn't have to use them because long distance was a thing, So to think of just how far we moved in that period of time, and then to think about where we're going to go in the future in the next 100 years, socially, technologically, everything, like it's going to blow your minds. And I feel like we're right on the, on the precipice of it. And I feel like crypto is, I'm just so excited to be involved in this space. I don't know if you guys can tell, I'm excited about cryptocurrency, regardless of my bags,
Yeah, to me, it's very interesting. Like, this isn't even like a self-praise thing. I find myself now not checking price anymore. Yeah. Like I don't, like I'll see like a tweet or whatever and I'll be like, oh, interesting. Like that's where it's at. But I actually now don't care that much about it. Maybe it's because I still have like an aversion from all the pain from 20. I don't know. But I think now we've finally gotten to the point where people are like, all right, 2018 sucked. That whole like 2017, I could have retired.
Yep.
I hodled and I messed up, right? Yep. Now, the only way to get back to that promised land is by building this stuff, making it work, making it real, working together. And so obviously there are always still trolls and people who just only care about money, but focusing on building stuff, making people aware of what's happening. I mean, that's like the sole focus right now for me.
Well, cool, man. Well, that's awesome. I think that's a really cool goal that you have, and I think that this has been a super fascinating conversation. I actually have to go be on someone else's podcast here in a few minutes, so I gotta cut it off. But very interesting talking about Tron, talking about Ethereum. Excited to go to Nitron and report back some stuff in the coming days. Tomorrow night, guys, we're gonna have a Bit Squad crypto chat. I may call it something else. I'm gonna try to get those. Make my thumbnails more interesting for my live streams. But you guys know, if you're in the Bit Squad crypto chat tomorrow night, I don't have a time for it yet. It'll either be like around maybe 6 p.m. Eastern or maybe like 10 p.m. Eastern, somewhere in between there. And can't wait to talk to you guys. I saw a lot of you guys making comments, all you guys making questions, having questions and things. Sorry we couldn't get to it tonight, but this was a great conversation. So appreciate you coming on the show. Where can they find you at, Forrest?
Yeah, you guys can come over and check out my channel. I worked with BitBoy a few times. My name is Forrest. My channel is Hashoshi. You can read that there. I have some merch available on cryptomovement.com. That's crypto-movement, MVMT. And it was great to talk to BitBoy as always and hang out with you guys. Super great.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, we will talk to you guys later. BitBoy out.